Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. Hope you are all fine. Today we are going to discuss another very important topic, that is the conflict, negotiation and stress management. These are the three different terms which the different managers should be aware about, and the different managers should have the skills that how to resolve the different conflicts. They should always have the good negotiation skills. Always keep in mind that whether you are the project manager or you are the strategic manager or you are any functional manager, the more you have the negotiation skills and bargaining skills, the more you will be successful in handling the different organizational issues. So from that perspective, this topic is very important. We will discuss both the positive and the negative effects of this conflict and especially stress. Most of the people know that conflict is always disadvantages for the organization, but that is not actually true. We will also conflict and a particular level of stress can be beneficial and advantages for the organization. So these skills and these management skills are really important for the managers to handle the different situations, and the good managers should always use these management skills in order to resolve the different issues that occur in the organizational settings. Let's discuss about the lecture outline, the different topics which we will discuss in today's lecture. We will define conflict, that what actually is the conflict. Then there are the different views of conflict. The most important views about conflict are the traditional conflict, human relations conflict, and interactionist view of conflict. We will discuss each of these views of conflict in detail. Then we will also discuss contrast, task, relationship and process conflict. These are the different sources which actually become the sources of creating conflict within the organizational settings. So we will discuss each of these types of conflicts. Then what is the conflict process? We will just have the outline of this conflict process, and we will discuss different steps which are involved in resolving the conflict. Then we will describe the five conflict handling intentions. These are different intentions which occur usually in handling the conflicts in the organizational settings. So we will discuss each of these intentions. Then usually there are two main types of bargaining which are important, which we will discuss in today's lecture. That is the distributive bargaining and integrative bargaining. So we will try to differentiate between both of these types of bargaining. Then there are the different steps in the negotiation process which have been defined by the different theories. We will discuss five steps of this negotiation process. Then we will discuss that what can be the different cultural issues in while doing the negotiations with the other parties. So culture also plays a very important role when you are negotiating with the other party. We will discuss the cultures of the different countries, like what is the culture in China, how the Chinese people negotiate with their customers, how the Americans usually negotiate with their customers. So we will discuss some of these issues based on the research. Then there is a technique which includes the different dispute resolution tools, which is usually termed as alternate dispute resolution, ADR. We will discuss this ADR, and we will discuss the different approaches which can be used in resolving the different disputes. Then issue management approach. Now there are many approaches which have been defined by the different theories. We will discuss one of the 6-step issue management approach, that whenever a problem or a symptom becomes an issue, then how we will have to resolve that issue. So we'll discuss the different steps which are involved in this issue management approach. Then finally we will define stress. And again, we will discuss both the positive and the negative impacts of stress. Then we will discuss in this lecture about the potential sources of stress, that what are the different sources which can create the stress in the organizational settings. And finally, we will try to explain the individual differences and behavioral variables that moderates the stress outcome relationship and which are helpful in handling the different stress situations. So let's start with the definition of conflict. Conflict is usually defined as a process that begins when one party perceives that another party has negatively affected or is about to negatively affect something that the first party cares about. So simply, when there are the issues which are opposing issues between the two different parties, and they are the different mindsets, they are the different views about a particular situation, then we say that there is a situation which is called as conflict. Is there a point in an ongoing activity when an interaction crosses over to become an inter-party conflict? Whenever the two parties interact with each other, whenever the two groups interact with each other, then a situation comes when their interaction crosses over a certain point, after which the conflict between those parties starts, when they are not going to agree on a particular agenda, on a particular point, and when they try when they perceive that the other party will be negatively affected by the first party's point of view. Now this is a situation which is termed as conflict, when we can say that the conflict has been occurred between the two different parties. Now, it encompasses a wide range of conflicts that people experience in the organizations. There are the different types of conflicts. There are the different sources which can cause these conflicts, and there are the different views about these conflicts. We will discuss these views about the conflicts as well. Mostly, the conflicts occur due to the incompatibility of goals. If the goals are not compatible in the light of the or in the view of the different parties, then the conflict may occur between these parties. For example, if your boss decides the certain goals for you, which you think are not the reasonable goals or the realistic goals, then again there will be a sort of situation which is termed as a conflict, and this conflict will be due to the incompatibility of goals. And this incompatibility is occurs because of the different viewpoints of the goals in the light of the different parties' points of view. Then differences over interpretation of the facts. This is very important. Sometimes the different things are being interpreted in the different ways by the different stakeholders. Okay? Whenever there are the two parties and they have the different interpretation about the different things about the particular facts, then again the situation will occur which is termed as conflict. Then disagreements based on the behavioral expectations. Everyone has his own behavior, everyone has his own personality in order to handle the different situations. Now these personality perspectives and these behavioral expectations can be another source of disagreement or conflict that can be occurred between the two different parties. So, in short, there can be many other sources of conflict, but mostly occurred conflict sources are the incompatibility of goals, differences over interpretation of the facts, and the disagreements based on behavioral expectations. Let's discuss about the different transitions in the conflict thought. These transitions define the different views about the conflict. Now again, these views are defined by the different theories on the basis of their own research. One is the one of the perspective or view about the conflict is the traditional view of conflict, which we and you, most of the people, know about the conflict. And what is that view? And that the belief that all the conflict is harmful and must be avoided. And this is nowadays, this is just a misperception. I'm telling you, we usually think, most of the people think that conflict is harmful and it should be avoided by the organizations. Now, this is the view which is termed as traditional view of conflict, and this is the traditional point which is usually known by the different people. And again, this why conflict is harmful and why it is not good for the organization and why it should be avoided. It is due to the poor the communication between the two different parties. Then lack of openness can be the other cause of this harmful sort of situation. Then third one is the failure to respond to the employee needs. So these are the different causes which can create this sort of situation which is harmful and which the organizations or the different people think that this situation should be avoided. And this traditional view approach assume that all the conflicts are bad. Conflict is not good thing for the organization, and it is always harmful and it should be avoided. So this is all about the traditional view of conflict. Then again, I said, as I said, that lack of openness and trust between the people and the failure of the managers to be responsive to their employees. Again, these are the most important causes to create conflict within the organizational settings. So this is about the traditional view of conflict. Then there is another view of conflict that is termed as human relations view of conflict. Now, what this view tells us, it is the belief that conflict is a natural and inevitable outcome in any group or organizations. Since it is natural and it is inevitable, therefore it should be accepted. It cannot be eliminated and may even contribute to the group performance. Now again, class, this is the just opposite view of that traditional viewpoint of conflict. And according to this human relations view of conflict, the point is that the conflict is a natural thing. Whenever the two different parties interact with each other, there will be a sort of conflict. It rarely happens that the different parties interact with each other and there is no conflict between those parties. That will never happen, especially in this area of competition and the communication oriented world. So this, according to this human relations view of conflict, conflict is the inevitable, and sometimes it is better for the organizations. It can contribute to the better performance of the employees as well as to the organizational performance. So this is about the human relations view of conflict. The third view of conflict is the interactionist view of conflict, and this is the belief that conflict is not only a positive force in a group, but that is absolutely necessary for a group to perform effectively. Now, this is another highly positive effect of conflict. This approach encourages conflict on the grounds that a harmonious, peaceful, and cooperative group is usually necessary to becoming static and non-responsive to the needs for change and innovation. So, according to this interactionist view of conflict, the conflict is very much necessary within the organization. It is the absolute necessity for all the organizations and for the different groups to perform effectively. Now, what is the background behind this interactionist view of conflict? Whenever the two different parties have the different opposing views, they should consider, or they would consider about the different ideas, about the different innovative ideas, that how these things can be resolved. So that may lead to the organizational and the group performance. So again, as you see that how these view change from one point to the other. Initially, when we discuss about the traditional view of conflict, we say that the most of the people think that conflict is not good for the organizations and it should be avoided. But this interactionist view of conflict is just opposite to that, and we say that that conflict is a very important and it is necessary within the organizations, because it can contribute to the better group performance. It can lead to the creativity, it can lead to the innovation, and it is therefore necessary for the groups to have a particular sort of conflict in order to discuss about for those competing ideas, so that they can have the better innovative solutions. So these are the different views which I just discussed. That is the traditional view of conflict, human relations view of conflict, and the interactionist view of conflict. Okay, as we just discussed that some conflicts may be bad for the organization and some conflicts may be very good for the organizations. So note all functional or constructive forms of conflict support the goals of the group and improve its performance. Conflicts that hinder the group performance are dysfunctional or destructive forms of conflict. So basically, there are two types of conflict. One are the functional conflict, or which may also be termed as the constructive sort of conflicts. And the other one is the dysfunctional conflict, or which can be termed as non-constructive sort of conflicts. So the conflicts that supports the goals of the group and improves its performance, that is the functional conflict. And that is again the interactionist viewpoint, or the human relations viewpoint of conflict. The other conflict, that is the dysfunctional conflict, is the conflict that hinders the group performance. That is not good for the organizations or the group performance. So that is the viewpoint which we initially discussed as the traditional viewpoint of conflict. So let's discuss that what differentiates the functional from the dysfunctional conflict. Let's discuss about these functional and dysfunctional conflicts. For this differentiation, we will have to discuss about the different types of conflicts, of which the first important type is the task conflict. Task conflict relates to the content and goals of the work. Whenever you are going to perform the particular jobs within the organizations, then the content of that job and the goals in order to achieve a particular performance level, there may be the different sort of conflicts occur within the organizational settings, and these conflicts are usually termed as task conflict. So low to moderate levels of task conflict are functional and consistently demonstrate a positive effect on the group performance, because it stimulates discussion, improving the group performance. When this task performance is within the level of low to moderate, then this will be considered as the functional conflict. But when this task conflict will be above a particular level, then this can be the dysfunctional conflict for the organization. Because when you have some competing views about a particular content and the goals of the work, you will discuss with your jobs, you will discuss with your managers, and that will again may increase your performance. But when this discussion, or when with this task conflict will be above that particular level, then that can be dysfunctional, and that may not be good for the organization as well as for the employees or the individuals. So basically the conflict which occur over the content and the goals of the work, that is termed as the task conflict. The second conflict type is the relationship conflict. Now, relationship conflict focuses on interpersonal relationships. These conflicts are almost always dysfunctional. This sort of conflict is usually dysfunctional, so it should be avoided for the good performance of the organization. It is dysfunctional and it is not good for the organization. The friction and the interpersonal hostilities inherent in the relationship conflict increase the personality clashes and decrease the mutual understanding. So whenever there is a sort of interpersonal conflict between the different individuals, this will create the sort of misunderstanding between the individuals, and that is not good for the performance. So relationship conflict is usually termed as dysfunctional conflict, and which is not considered good for the organizations and should always be avoided within the organizations. The third, another important type of conflict is the process conflict. The process conflict relates to how the work gets done. Low level processes conflict are functional and could enhance the team performance. As we discussed in the task conflict, that low to the moderate task conflict is functional, and the when we it will be increased above a particular level, then it will be dysfunctional. The same is true for the process conflict. Whenever the process conflict will be at the lower level, then it will be functional and it will be good for the organization, and it will enhance the team performance. So for the process conflict to be productive, it must be kept at the low level. Whenever it will be increased from that particular low level, then again it will become dysfunctional and it will be disadvantage for the organization. So we can also say that intense arguments or over the process conflict, that will not be good for the organizations. So if we sum up the discussion on this slide, we can say that task conflict will be beneficial or functional when it will remain in the low to the middle level. But whenever it increase from that middle level, it may be dysfunctional or may not be good for the organization. The relationship conflict usually is not good at any level for the organization. It is usually functional sort of conflict, and the organization should always avoid it. In case of process conflict, it will be good for the organization whenever it will be remained in the at the lower level, but whenever it will be increased from that lower level, it may also be dysfunctional or may not be good for the organization. So you see, throughout the discussion, we cannot always say that the conflict is not always good for the organization. It may be sometimes very good for the organization, and it may enhance the group and the organizational performance. So that viewpoint of conflict is very important. That we'll have to find out the conditions or the stages that at what level the conflict will be better, and at what level the conflict will be not better for the organization, and it may hinder the performance of the individuals as well as for the organizations. So we just discussed the functional conflict and the dysfunctional conflict, and I discussed the different types of conflict in relation to that functional and dysfunctional conflict. Now let's discuss the conflict process. That what are the different stages under which this conflict arises? Potential opposition or incompatibility. In this condition, it is the presence of the conditions that create opportunities for the conflict to arise. These are the basic points which give you the idea that the conflict may arise in the future. There are the three different general categories about this stage. The first one is the communication. Communication as a source of conflict represents those opposing forces that arise from semantic difficulties. Semantic difficulties means the language, the different language which the different people may have about the certain things, and from that there